you. Paradise. So how are we doing on this does not require thinking? Anybody think this week? Make noise. I can't see you doing some. Who's working with the flashcard? Anybody? Our class tonight. This is the last class until July 17th, which is Dulce's retreat at Sarah is from the 11th to the 15th. 11th is a Monday and 17th is the first Monday after Dulce's retreat. And by the way, I think about also being in the Joel tape group this Sunday. Don't forget that. If you want to be here for that. I don't know what it will be this time. She said a special Joel tape. So it'll probably be a special Joel tape. So that means that we get 6 weeks to practice this. I would suggest if you feel like doing that, and you have the book, to go back and reread the front part of the chapter we're working on is Rising in Mystical Consciousness. And go back and reread the front 4 or 5 pages, however much it is, on the obstacles. Remind yourself of all the obstacles, which are also the stuff that we talked about in the first chapter, about the stuff we need to empty out. Remind yourself of all the obstacles, the beliefs, and the concepts, and the desires, and the on and on and on, as brought up by Joel and Robert and Barbara. And don't forget your lists of things, the love and hate and fear and desire. And then I would think that the thing to do might be to choose a practice to practice every day for the next 6 weeks. The practices we outlined were being around higher consciousness, and that would be, the group is fine, getting to that retreat would be fine, coming here on Wednesday or Friday or Sunday evenings for meditations would be fine, or wherever else you find higher consciousness, but hanging out with a group that's doing this work, get yourself lifted. And I'm just talking about getting lifted, your consciousness is either tuned into the world mind or it's tuned into God consciousness. And the more you lift yourself into a higher consciousness, the more your life will reflect that. So that's a very fundamental practice. Learning the letter of truth would mean reading Joel's stuff, reading Robert's stuff, reading my stuff, listening to tapes, listening or reading Eckhart Tolle or Hawkins or Rashneesh or any of the masters. But don't sell yourself short. Don't read stuff by popular writers who are making it. There are a lot of people who make a lot of money by taking the words of the masters and making it accessible to large media audiences who will take the words of a Robert and publish books that make it understandable by, 1 million people. And if 1 million people can understand it, that's not the truth we're looking for. That means that they've thrown out all the parts that piss people off, or all the parts that are hard to take, or all the parts that require confronting. You'll never find those books telling you you have to give up everybody you love. They'll talk about giving up hate, but they won't talk about giving up love. That's an equally hard and strength to humanhood, etc. So don't get the popularizations of people and don't get the popular writers. Read the works of masters. And if the master spoke English, much the better. If they spoke some other language, like if you're into the Chinese or the Japanese Zen masters or into the Muslim mystics or somebody, make sure who the translator is. Because if a non-Zen master translates the Zen master's words from Japanese into English, by the time it gets into English, it's not Zen. It's been lost because the guy was using his intellect and paying attention to the words and not getting the flavor. So it almost takes a master to translate a master. And there are a few masters who are experts in translating. So as well, there are some masters who are also PhDs in languages and stuff. So there are good translators. But learn the letter of truth. And equally more important is practicing the letter of truth. Learning the letter of truth feeds your brain, feeds your intellect, gets you pointed in the right direction, but that doesn't cut it. That's a good start, but it doesn't do it. You need to actually aggressively practice the letter of truth. Joel, the primary reason Joel taught healing so strongly is because, not because he cared about healing people, because if you heal somebody spiritually, so somebody's got a cancer. And, so what difference does it make whether you heal them spiritually or mentally or through chemo? If they get healed, what difference does it make how they got healed? The primary purpose for the healing practice is practicing healing is practicing the letter of truth, and the practitioner will attain the consciousness. So, picking any single truth, and that's what the flashcards are about too, by the way. They're not affirmations or anything like that. What they are is practice, their daily practice. In every situation you encounter during the day, the way you work a flashcard is every single situation you encounter during the day that brings up any tendency to want to react or any tendency to move towards emotion should be confronted with, well, let me think, does this really require my thinking? Let me think before we leave, but does this really require my thinking? This does not require my thinking. And, and addressing it with that. And for sure we should be using whatever the flashcard is on every single thing that brings up any reaction or that brings up any emotion or brings up any desire to abuse any substance. And having mastered the flashcard on that, then you should start bringing it up on the things that bring happiness. Because happiness is just as much of a trap as sadness, So, flashcards the purpose of flashcard is a practice technique, practicing over and over and over. Until that particular flashcard becomes part of you. And I was reading Hawkins this morning, he said the same thing. Take any spiritual principle, the shortest way to spiritual progress. He said, take a spiritual principle. Take the principle of compassion. Take the principle of unconditioned love. Take the principle of, take any strong spiritual principle. Take the principle of service. And apply it to everything, unrelentingly apply it to everything. Let's say there's compassion. Everybody you meet during the day, check to see whether or not you're feeling compassionate towards that person if they're in difficulty. If you're working on unconditional love, check everybody you meet all day long and see whether or not you love them. He's saying that's the short route to enlightenment, or for spiritual progress. So it's practice. All right, so that was the next method, is practicing the letter of truth.
Yeah, that's a question. When you said earlier, Well, the reason I want to bring this up is because you just talked about, you said choose any one of these, and the reason I didn't respond earlier when you asked about that flashcard is ever since you gave us one certain flashcard, I've been really using it like all the time, and it's kind of working for me, like it's the one that I don't know how this should look. And so that, I just kind of stuck with that, and it's just like huge things are happening because of that. So is that okay?
Sure.
It's like, you know, when you find your script, you find the right word, and it's all says, oh yeah, that's it. This one seems to be working really well for you. Okay.
If you really completely get that you don't know how this should look, you will have solved all the flashcards. You realize that when you really get a flashcard, I mean, like, this doesn't require my thinking, makes no sense to the intellect, right? And I don't know how this should look, makes no sense to the intellect. And trusting in Christ makes no sense to the intellect. None of these things make any sense to the intellect, okay? They're koans. The infinite way is the Western Zen. They're koans, is what they are. And once you really solve any koan, you solve them all. They all have the same answer. Unfortunately, it's inexpressible. But these are just koans. But when you master one, the rest will become obvious. It's like when we get to the 8th chapter, when we do the principles, Robert had, the 4 principles that he always said, and they're all the same. I asked him about that. I said, they're all the same. He laughed. He said, oh, you got it. But they don't sound the same, but they're all the same. And all the principles are the same principle. And all there is God is the principle. Or it's all consciousness. If you get all there is consciousness, you're done. But you got to get it to your toes, not. So you don't get above the neck. That's not what it is. Okay. So, and then we talked about 3 spiritual practices. Now, the purpose of every spiritual practice, and there are lots more spiritual practices. Yoga is a great one. Lots of spiritual practices. And they're valid spiritual practices if their purpose is to get you quiet. And I speak, for instance, Hatha Yoga is a wonderful spiritual practice for working on flexibility and balance and poise and all those things. And the meditation that we do at the beginning and the end of Hatha Yoga are great for reaching silence, okay? But the main purpose of Hatha Yoga is different from enter into silence. That's quite appropriate. But any method that's designed to lead you to the silence is a valid spiritual method. And we have 3 that I've mentioned in this book primarily because one's from Robert and one's from Joel and one's from Barbara. And that's a good list of sources. What we presented here are their 3 methods. And meditation is Joel's, and he uses contemplative meditation. And if that's your best, if that's the way you like to get quiet, if that works for you, practice that. Read a spiritual passage. Not a chapter, read a paragraph, or read something in a book. Read until you've heard something. Out of an old book or out of any true spiritual book. Read until you've heard something. And then contemplate it. Think about it. What does that mean? All there is consciousness. What does that mean? What's consciousness? What's not consciousness? What does it mean all? What's outside? And mull it over. Mull that over to Barbara. Think about it. Even though it doesn't require your thinking. Contemplate it. And if you contemplate it for a while, and if you stay focused on contemplating, your mind will slow down. You'll explore it, and you'll get slower and slower until eventually you'll get quiet, okay? And now you're in the first stage of meditation. Contemplation is not meditation, but when you get quiet, you're in the first stage of meditation. And this is what Joel calls prayer. Prayer is the place that you arrive at where you're sitting quietly, consciously, not asleep, quietly, consciously, expectantly, with no words or thoughts, no demands, no desires, no sense of what should happen, just expectantly. Joel uses the expression, speak, Lord, and your servant is listening, as the quote that he took out of someone in the Bible, no doubt. Samuel? Okay. So, but that's the attitude, okay? You sit quiet. And the next stage that happens is when you experience the flow, or the presence, whatever you want to call it, but it feels like a flow. And now you're in communion, okay? And that's the next stage of the meditative practice, when you receive communion. There's communication going back. And if you work with that long enough, the communion will grow and grow until you lose your sense of self. And now you're in a state called unity. And that's the final stage of meditation. Okay? So it goes from contemplation to prayer or meditation to communion to unity. Okay? And that's a valid practice. That's the practice that all the contemplatives since day one have been using in the Christian church. Well documented. John of the Cross did it, and Sister Teresa, and probably both Sister Teresas, and on and on and on. And it's not far from the centering prayer that the Catholic and various other churches have brought forward now, the Episcopal Church especially, pushing that. And so if that is your nature to practice that way, then practice that way every day for the next 6 weeks. Any questions about that? And if this is not we're not talking about an hour, we're talking about playing with it. Play with it and play with it and see how far you get, you know. I mean, you don't have to get the unity the first day. What you can do is read the paragraph and practice contemplating this and see whether or not you get quiet. See whether or not it leads to a point where your mind stops for a few seconds. It's sort of like letting your mind run out of gas. See if your mind just gets quiet for a few seconds, okay? And then do that over and over and again, and that period of quiet will get a little longer. So that's a big game to play. Robert says the direct method is self-inquiry. And that's a different type of person that can do self-inquiry. And it really is a direct question because it really is asking, you know, what is this ego center? The ego center, this concept that there is a little I, a self and a small s, a we, that is the problem is the identification with the personal sense. The whole problem is just misidentification. And misidentification is summed up in the pronoun I. You know, I this, I that, I Robert used to say. And so the question is, who is this I? Where does this I come from? And you can ask, from whom does this I, from whom do these thoughts come, or this anger come, or this reaction come? If you want to practice it on reactions and emotions, but who's getting emotional? Who's the reaction coming to? Who got cut off? Who got blocked? Who's driving behind the slow asshole? You know, the question is always trying to decide and say, who's having this problem? Who's having this discomfort? Or who's having this discomfort? Whatever. So you can turn it to I. And the way the scenario goes is you say, you know, to whom do these thoughts come? And usually you'll hear your mind say, they come to me. And you say, well, who is this me? Who is I? And wait for an answer. And in that way, you're in silence. Just like that. And or the minute your head cranks up again, repeat it. Come up with another thought. Oh, that didn't work. Who thinks it doesn't work? I do. Who is this I? So there's two things. One is to go to the silence, and the other thing you can do is another thing he talks about is sometimes he says instead of asking who is this I, he asks, what's the source of this I? Where does this I come from? And you can actually explore. Where does this I come from? What is this I? Where does it come from? And he talks about following the I thought. He talks about following it like a chain or something. And what what I learned on doing that is if I just quietly say I, repeat I to myself very quietly, I, make a circle to I, this little I is a lowercase I say I. And what happens is I say that, it gets further and further apart that I say that, and the I thought itself dissolves. And Robert says that everything in the universe is attached to the I thought. And that's a very hard thing to understand. You mean stars are attached to the I thought? You mean Pluto is attached to the I thought? What does the I thought have to do with Pluto? Anybody have any sense of that? What?
It's my perception of what that is.
That's right. I is a perception I have of my personal self, and my personal self is perceiving the universe. The universe is not a material universe, it's a perceptual universe. And I is the guy I've assigned to, I've nominated and promoted as the perceiver of the perceptual universe, okay? And what I'm perceiving, what I is perceiving, is I's concepts of its own perception, of the five sense physical perception, okay? So the I thought really is the foundation of it all. If Lee is real, Pluto is real. If Lee is just a perception, Pluto is just a perception. If Lee is physical, Pluto is physical. If Lee is spiritual, Pluto is spiritual. Okay? Yeah.
But I enjoy that. That is just the exact opposite, which is that every time that science thinks it's got the smallest building block in the universe, where they know it, dissolves.
But it's not all of it.
I mean, you can't, and if you can't touch the fundamental block, then it's got all of the universe.
Oh yeah. And you got to start watching. You got to study. You got to really study quantum physics. I spent a year now reading quantum mechanics and getting into it to see what the math is like, and it's just delightful. Because you can't say anything about anything until somebody sees it. You know, I mean, an electron has no position at all. It has a series of possibilities of positions that it can be in, okay? But it doesn't have any position until somebody observes it, okay? Isn't that interesting? You have to see it. Now the question is, what happens if two people see it at exactly the same time? Can they see it in different places? Well, if they could, the whole universe falls apart, right? Because you can't have the electron in two places. But how do you resolve the dilemma that two people who are presumably of equal level could see it presumably at two different places? How would you resolve that apparent paradox? Only one way. Only one seer. Looking through two sets of eyes. Only one seer realizing where something is. Okay? And it doesn't matter whether it's looking through my eyes or your eyes, the one awareness, the one seer is seeing it where it is. And then you go back to Genesis 1. And it talks about God seeing. It doesn't talk about God creating. It talks about God saw it and it was good. God seeing things into existence. It says right there in Genesis about God seeing things. Yeah. Seeing is creation. Seeing is manifestation. It's all there. So that's very fun too.
It occurred to me a little while ago that what would there be if there were no senses?
If there were no material physical senses?
Yeah. What would there be?
Exactly what is.
Yeah.
There would just be no sense of it. No physical sense.
No, it's bizarre thought.
there's no concept. There's no concept of it. I mean, there is what you're smelling. But the one who smells it and sees it and does all those things exists only to the extent that it smells, sees, hears, tastes, and touches itself, and thinks about itself. It's no different than it's just another perception in the perceptual universe, and it truly is the perceptual universe. So that's where self-inquiry can lead. So watch out, don't look at it. But anyway, self-inquiry can lead you to the silence because it has done so for me. And it can also lead you to a distance from your sense of the personal I. And if you get a hold of this I thought, and I feel I, and you watch it dissolve into the nothingness that it is, because, there's nothing to look for. There is nothing behind I that you can see, hear, taste, touch, or smell. Okay? It's just a thought. Alright? And when the thought is not being thought, there is no little I. So, it can lead to that pursuit, and that's a real important point on the spiritual path, to realize that my sense of self is just a thought. And Robert always calls it, he doesn't call it personal sense, he calls it the I thought. And I always spell that with this lowercase I. It's the I thought. It's the thought. Who would you be if you never thought I? So you could, while you're practicing that, start practicing referring to yourself in the third person. Byron Katie did that. If those of you who've read some Byron Katie, you notice that after she had a cataclysmic, she woke up one day and there wasn't any I, and that's happened to a few people, that they wake up and look in the hole where I used to be and there's nothing there, And then the natural response is to start saying, well, she didn't get up this morning, or she's, and to think about, because it's so clear that that's just another one of those things, her and her and her and him and him and him and, just another one of those body things. So, practicing referring to yourself in the third person privately.
Yeah, that's his story, and he's sticking to it.
There's certain circles where you probably don't want to follow that path, but privately and amongst your friends, these friends, that would be part of practicing self-inquiry, perhaps.
I think I was just reading, I think it was in David Hawkins' book where somebody asked him what was a really quick path to enlightenment. He said, don't use the word I for a month. He said it can't be done. If it's done, you're done. And I was just thinking about that, because everything is based on
the outcome. That's the stuff we talked about the last 2 weeks, about the fact that we believe that every effect has a cause, so every thought has to have a thinker, and every feeling has to have the one who feels it, and because we think there has to be a subject for every objective thing, we form the illusion that is me, and assign the main I to it. And the fact is that there is no thinker, there is no seer, there is no feeler. That's the false concept. So, if you can drop the I, and that's what Robert says too, go straight to the source. Opinions are the same thing. Whenever you find yourself stating an opinion, ask yourself who has that opinion, and go find it. When you're sharing your opinion with somebody, or thinking about I believe, who believes? Go find the one who holds that opinion. And that's why your opinion is so sacred, and everybody else's opinions need to be taken with a grain of salt, or taken or leaving. The reason people get into so much trouble is they really believe it's their opinion. And that's impossible. Yeah. So another part of self-inquiry is who has that opinion? Who believes that? Who thinks that's right? Heroin, and any one of those is a 3-second exercise, and nobody there, you just find out very quickly, who has that opinion? If you quiet, and you ask who believes that, you don't need to even bother to try to figure out where you got it. You can play with where I got that conditioning. Where did this conditioning come from? But,
that was happening with me this semester all the time. I would be talking, and I didn't realize I wasn't consciously doing that, but asked myself, who believes that? And there was no one there, and I would catch myself in the middle of something. It's really hard to teach. It's the material that I started to teach when I had no idea. I had no attachment to that, nor do I believe it in most cases anymore. And it just makes it very interesting.
Ted McKenna is another very weird, very clear guy. Has one and only one method that he prescribes while we're talking about methods. His method is talk about our inventory and 12-step work. He says, go through your mind and inventory everything. And make a list of those things that you know are true. Go through everything you believe about church, about school, go through everything in your mind. Just catalog it methodically. This is a many-month project, but go through that thing. Sift through your entire mind and make a list of all the stuff that you know is true. When you find something you think is true, check it out. How do you know it's true? The sun will come up tomorrow. Well, how do I know the sun will come up tomorrow? It has come up a lot of times, and statistics are really good it will come up tomorrow. But let's suppose it comes up tomorrow. Does the sun really come up tomorrow? Well, I perceive that the sun comes up tomorrow, but that's just a perception. Is there anything out there called the sun? You see? That's where the sun will come up tomorrow cannot go on my list. Okay? That kind of radical addressing of what you know is true.
And that's Byron Katie's the work. Is it true? Do you really know it's true? And if you sit with somebody who is adamant about a truth they think, takes about 5 minutes to get in that place that they don't have anything to say anymore.
Yep.
Which is really interesting. Of anything anybody says.
Sure, yeah.
So I can imagine categorizing everything I believe.
Just go through your mind, but the point is to go through your mind and look at everything that your life is based on, because you're acting on those things that you think are true. This is right, I'm doing it. This is wrong, so I'm not doing it. So your whole behavior pattern is determined entirely by what you think is true. You think it's true that this is good, and this is bad, and this is the right thing to do, and this is wrong, yada, 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 And your entire behavior, all of your actions are determined by things you believe are true. And if you look at any one of them, you'll discover that there's no reason to believe that's true. You have no way of knowing whether that's true or not, which takes a lot of the forcefulness out of your activity. Okay, so that's self-inquiry. Pick only one of these. Don't dabble with all of these. Don't go across it. I mean, come to meditation once or twice or 3 times a week if you want to, because that's not an activity. But as far as meditation or self-inquiry or the awareness exercise, pick one of them and pick some aspect of it. Perfect one thing. Work on one thing. Try to get some depth on one thing. Otherwise, you'll just be flailing about. And the last one was the awareness exercise, and we practiced that for the last 2 weeks, and you know what that is, and that's a shortcut directly into the silence. And if you practice it, you will develop the muscles going into the silence. You can practice it until you can get into the silence at will, and long enough prescription kid, then you can stay there. Which is why we do the other work here. And the awareness exercise I did put on the website, the half-hour practice that we did last week. And if you go to the home page in the upper left-hand corner, there's a button up there. In the upper right-hand corner is a misery meter, and in the upper left-hand corner, click there, and it'll lead you to the awareness exercise. It's a half-hour. It's that whole half-hour class in which we practiced it and talked about it and our experience and such like. And that box over there, the stuff called Letting It All Go, is a class that Goldsmith taught doing the awareness exercise. So he always takes it over there for $7. And I figured out it costs $2 to manufacture them, and plus he gets the other 5. So you can have those, and I can make more if you need them. So pick something. The awareness exercise is really easy probably the easiest one to practice every day. Yeah.
I had a bizarre experience with it because I've had this sense that when I approach the silence, that what I'm supposed to do is that I'm supposed to wait until I drop into it and not actively court it. So it's like a false humility thing. Mm-hmm. And so what the awareness, just saying I want you to do it, on a daily basis for the next week, for the next 6 weeks, I had just some amazing results from it just because I've never actively courted that stuff because with an ego like mine, anytime I think I've got something to work on, here I go. Mm-hmm. But it was really a wonderful help.
Well, the fact is that you've been hanging around for 1,000 lifetimes or so, and God hasn't bothered to drop you into the silence, so it's like be time to take some steps, Yeah. The fact is that with sufficient practice of the awareness, I'll make you a promise, with sufficient practice of the awareness exercise this year, you can, everybody here, can learn to be in the silence in 1 second. Guarantee it. You'll practice the awareness exercise every day, and it can take a few, initially will take a while, because go back and check the body parts and establish the fact that you have this faculty. You've got to believe that you have this faculty, okay? And then establish the fact that it can go to things non-material like I, and establish that. And establish the fact that it follows direction, that it knows where I is, where you don't know where I is, but it does. So you're going to go find I, and you will discover that it knows that I is not in the body, even though you may think it's in the body. It knows, And demonstrate that you have this tool, and then reach to the silence. And I'm in it. Like that, I'm in it, yeah.
So by practicing this, what are we doing? Are we strengthening, or are we clearing? Like,
you're expanding your awareness.
Okay. So our awareness is small, and
you're expanding. This is, I think I said last week. You're actively growing your spiritual adult. You're increasing your awareness. When you say you're increasing your awareness of God. And of course, the definition of spiritual adult is the extent to which you're aware of God. So what you're doing is increasing your awareness. Barbara draws this wonderful picture of a funnel, where the top end of the funnel is God, okay? And there's this spout, and down here at the end of the spout is you, okay? The individual, impersonal expression of God, okay? What you're doing is widening the diameter of the spout. Right now, you're peeking up that little tiny spout, okay? Trying to see what's up there. And what the practice is we could say, and of course it's all nonsense, saying what you're doing, what appears to happen is that you're increasing your awareness. Well, you are increasing your awareness of God, your awareness of of God. So you could say you're developing your awareness faculty. But what's really happening is the awareness when I say you're developing your awareness faculty is the awareness faculty. It's God's awareness faculty. So what you're really increasing is the amount of your awareness faculty that you, the little self, is aware of. You're opening the pipe. And of course, there is no little self down there at the end. It's all pipe, but you don't know that. So, the answer isn't quite right. Well, what you're doing is you're increasing your awareness. And it's the same thing to talk about. You're building a muscle and practicing. I like that image of growing the diameter of the funnel pipe, It's
like going from dialogue to broadcast.
Yeah. And then you get to where you can get it at Starbucks. Without a phone. Yeah. Cool. God's very broadband.
Good.
Okay, so that's the awareness exercise, and play with that. Now, just for the sake of completeness, let's finish the chapter. So that we can wrap this thing up. Then, in August, we're going to start on practical mysticism. The topics are living by grace, fly, tithing, problems, employment, business, companionship, relationships, spiritual healing, protective work, and practice. So there's a good list of topics that we'll be getting into. So
When does this start?
the first Monday after Sarah.
Right. So it's July, right?
July 17th.
Right.
Immersion?
Yeah, let's read immersion. Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Immersion. On page 89. The next thing we want to talk about is immersion. Our difficulty is the unbelievable extent to which we have been conditioned. It's as if we've been programmed by a universal cult called humanity into believing we're one of them. And we need to be deprogrammed, dehypnotized. When we consider the extent of the conditioning we have received and the extent to which our programming is being reinforced every minute of every day by everyone we meet and everything we read, watch, or listen to, we get an idea of the size of the deprogramming task we are undertaking.
That's the problem. The amazing thing is that everybody gets out.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the surprising thing.
Barbara said that the minimum daily work for spirits students included a 60-minute tape of some spiritual master each day, plus a chapter a day from a spiritual book, and at least 4 meditations a day.
Focusing on one tape and hearing it again and again, letting it settle deeper and deeper into our consciousness each time, is better than hearing lots of tapes. The number of tapes, the amount of truth we have heard and memorized, is not what does the work. Setting one truth into our consciousness so that we can experience its truth is what does the job. When we can move, then we can move on to the next one.
Go ahead and read that last paragraph.
The deeper our immersion is in spiritual truth, the quicker we become deprogrammed, the better chance we have of being the one rather than the one of 999.
So, immerse yourself. And the more you do it, the quicker it happens.
And also, I was thinking, because you had me do this year, because I'm sure you still do this with everybody, is stop listening to the things that keep you programmed. Like, you can read all the spiritual books in the world, but if you watch the news every day, a lot, you know what I'm saying? It kind of, throws you off a little.
Be aware that there's only one consciousness. And be aware that you're choosing where you go, and so you're sort of choosing what consciousness you're immersing yourself in. They like to say in AA, if you keep going to the barber shop, you're going to get your hair cut. If you keep going to the doctor, he's going to find something wrong. If you keep going to the psychiatrist, she's going to think she can help you, and therefore she's going to think that there's something wrong with you. And that's wrong. That's not true. There is nothing wrong with us. So be aware of the consciousness you're immersing yourself in. Certainly, watching news is insanity because all they're trying to do is pump you up emotions anymore. And all the news programs are now Geraldo's.
Yeah.
Years ago, Geraldo was a real shock. Yeah, I mean, he made his reputation on a shocking, a blatant, reaching for the emotional strings of people, you know. And now you watch Sports Center and they feel like I got to run a 5-minute Geraldo every hour telling me some poor sad state about some pathetic person who can't, some poor guy who's got a leg problem now and can't make his $14 million a year playing shortstop. You know, I mean, even Sports Center has their Geraldo segment. You just can't not do it. Certainly watching sitcoms is insanity. I mean, sitcoms are all about script. Like the normalcy of scripted, and they'll condition you into believing that script is the normal state of affairs and resistance behaviors are the only way to survive. I would say going to stand-up comedy is insane. All stand-up comedians is about is way below Hawkins' 200 level on consciousness. I mean, yeah. All that stuff, you know, is really sick. Tell me the last time you heard a stand-up comedian that if you ask yourself, and you may be laughing, I don't know that, but if you ask yourself really seriously and quietly, is this really sick? When was the last time you heard one that you wouldn't come with the answer yes? Yes. Can you think of a stand-up comedian that you wouldn't say yes? Yeah.
Dugan.
Huh?
Look at Dugan. My friend Mike Dugan.
Oh, okay.
He's doing incredible consciousness raising.
Can be, yeah.
Yeah.
They certainly had Teresa.
Yeah.
Singing consciousness lifting songs in nightclubs and stuff like that. It can happen, but by golly, most of it is real low level, make fun of people, tear people down, and laugh at their resistant behaviors type stuff, you know. It's really sick. So be aware of that, you know. I mean, before you go into a room, be aware of the consciousness you're about to walk into. As you're walking into a consciousness, I was talking to a lady on the phone today, and I told her that I'm a senior doctor since 1986, and I don't remember the last time I was in a doctor's office. Now, why did I go there? They feel they find something wrong with me. So pay attention. Not only work on being around higher consciousness, work on not being around lower consciousness. That's good stuff. Immerse yourself in the right kind of consciousness. The more you do, the quicker it goes. And you'll only do what you can do, and I understand that, but be aware of it. Your choices as a result. Yeah.
Do you think kids have higher consciousness?
No.
Or more awareness? I mean, I feel like I've learned, you know, they seem to be so much more in touch with, like, now.
Oh, they're simpler, they're less confused.
Okay.
But no, their consciousness is many higher. You come in with the same level of consciousness that you went out with.
Okay.
And in the first hours, they may still be in touch with where they came from rather than where they are. They may not shut down completely, but the fact is that a 4-year-old has the level of consciousness it had when it went out at 80. But it's not nearly as confused. It's very simple. It doesn't have a fresh backlog of resentments and desires and hopes and fears and hates and loves and stuff, you know. And
doesn't think it understands and doesn't think it should. So it can, certainly a young kid can sit there and watch a bug for an hour. Blissfully happy, okay? And that's not enlightenment, but
Let's squish it.
but to see what happens then. All their intention is to see what happens when you squish a bug, So, and that's just that they're not complicated. Happy because they've been taught not to be happy. Haven't been taught to be unhappy yet. Like it should. They're in the old stage.
I just was thinking of an example about this regarding the difference that I've experienced. A really concrete example for me that I have to remember is like listening to tapes and stuff, or reading, spiritual books, or listening to tapes, which I do frequently. I had an experience where I was listening to some tapes that I had, from here, and then I went on this retreat, like 4 days. I think it was one of the silent ones, the Doris Crawford retreat. And I remember coming back when I actually came here and drove here for meditation. I was listening to the tape, and I had listened to those tapes probably a couple of weeks before, and it was like a whole, I heard it totally differently, it was like, oh my God, I got to keep this for another, because it was like a completely different tape, and nothing had changed, but I had been in silence for, that period of time, and it was like amazing. I was like, why did I listen to this at least 20 times? And so, it's such a good example, and I also know that this listening to tapes when I'm not doing more meditation, I'm immersed in human consciousness, or I've watched too much TV or whatever, but I can't hear it. It's almost like irritating to me, I can't listen to this anymore. So that's like a really good example for me, but I also notice when I'm in the middle of it, I just have to where I can't really hear it, and the only thing I can do is come here, get lifted to get to that place. I can't make myself do anymore to be able to hear it. So
you get higher, but if you get silent, if you develop a habit of being silent, or we hang out in a spiritual retreat, those of you who come with us to Sarah this year, we're going to be silent 3 days, and by Friday morning, it's pretty high. There, you're really pretty high, and you don't need to read or listen to the tape. You're always just high. But that always happens. You get high, and things keep getting clearer and clearer. But I listen to the same old Joel tapes over and over again, and it's so often, I've been listening to the same series of Joel tapes since before last year's July Sarah retreat. I've been watching this one series of tapes, and listen to probably two of them a week, so I get through the cycle maybe in 4 months, and I listen to them every night. I listen to the same one over and over until I'm pretty clear I'm not going to hear anything more this time. And just periodically, all of a sudden I hear something, and it drops deeper. And I feel it drop. I feel it click. I feel it drop deeper. And it's very clear to me that I would use the same words to describe what he said after that I would have used before. That no words have changed. And I haven't learned anything that I didn't know. I've known all that. I haven't heard anything in Joel in a long time that I didn't know. There are no surprises in the infinite way for me anymore. I've spent 30 years here. I've heard it all. I really have heard it all and understand what he's saying. But then it drops. There's a clip. Oh, that's what he meant. And I've known what he meant for 10 years, and it's a little deeper. So that moves on. And that's from staying in the same. And that's a result of listening to that same series over rather than moving on. And I'll do it until I get through the series without a clip. Then I'll go to another series. I can get a clarity every week or
a noticeable click every week or month. I get maybe one a week or one every 2 weeks. You know, oh, yeah, something drops. You know, and if you get a click every week or two, wow, that's good. That's just fine. You learn something. So that's why I keep saying pick one of these methods. Don't do them all. I don't think it was read secrecy, because nobody likes to hear about secrecy. But I'm going to just say very briefly the principle of secrecy, just so you know it, as you're learning these truths. The principle of secrecy is that when you first hear a new truth, when you hear it for the first time and you get a click on it, don't rush out and share it with everybody. Because if I share a spiritual truth with somebody who's not ready to hear it, they'll get defensive and have to tell me, no, that's not true, or defend their position and tear it down, okay? People that aren't ready to hear spiritual truth have to fight it. They will. So, and if it's a brand new thing that I've just heard, and I haven't worked with it, I can get talked out of it. And I can lose that truth. I can lose that click. So if I tell you I get clicked, but I'm not telling you what the clicks are, I can lose that click. Okay? So I don't talk about it. And it says here you can talk about it with your spiritual teacher if you have one, because your spiritual teacher can often reinforce it by saying, yeah, that's true, or perhaps give you some examples or expand it for you. But if you have any hesitancy about sharing it with your spiritual teacher, don't share it with your spiritual teacher. It's yours. It's in you. You got it. It's there. Let it cook. Let it incubate. And what will happen is it will incubate and it will become yours. And one day you will find yourself sharing it with somebody who's come to you, that with a sponsee, for example, or somebody who's come to you. All of a sudden you will hear it coming out of you. And when somebody draws it out of you, it's yours. Okay? And now that's part of your life. And what they've done is they've come to your life, and that's now part of your life that you're reflecting. And that means it's yours and you won't lose it. So the principle of secrecy is just don't share this stuff with anybody.
Now, it's so compelling to do so and to get it really big. I mean, you can hardly resist. You know, this summer, when I had that, healing experience, don't tell that to the doctors.
No.
I get really pissed. And I'm so glad I had here to come to, and I realized I stopped talking about it.
Absolutely.
But I wanted to tell them, and they can't. It was anger, and
Are you challenging my godhood?
Yes, and everything that I believe in and I do.
Yeah.
And so there was proof, and that I was so glad that I had here and all of you guys, because it could be very easy to talk out of that, and I didn't really see it. But when it's happening, you can't help.
Yeah, you get the light and you feel enlightened, and you want to go around and save the world, but the world can't hear. The answer always is you work on yourself. Absolutely 100% selfish. Work on yourself. Work on your own spiritual growth. Work on your own understanding. Do this work. Do it yourself, quietly. And your light will grow. And your light will bring people to you. And it will bring the ones to you that are ready to hear it. That's why I say so comfortably that any one of you can master the awareness exercises here, to where you can drop into the silence in 1 second. I know that for sure, because I didn't ask any of you to come here. Okay? And your own, whatever it is within you, brought you here. To hear about the awareness exercise, or you would have missed the last 2 weeks. If you weren't ready for the awareness exercise, you would have been here. Okay? So, my light and the light of this group brings you here to hear what's being said here. And so the right people are here. And we don't ever, Joel's instruction that he received was never seek a student, never turn one away. And I know Barbara obeyed that, and I obeyed that. None of you have ever heard me mention scripture kids in an AA meeting, for example, and you never will. I don't talk about this work there. But people there wonder what's going on with me, or with the people I sponsor. How did you get what you have? And they're drawn to the light.
Yeah. Well, because that's what happens in AA.
Sure.
I mean, when you get sober, you want to tell everybody, you want them to know how great it is, and I know for me and for many people, it gets right in the face. I'll never forget this girl sharing. She said, I ran to my parents and said, I'm an alcoholic, and they go, okay, great, that's you're a vegetarian, but it's the same thing. And then it becomes a program of attraction, and you're with people who are in that life. So, thank you.
Go to the first two clubs and tell them you got sober, and they'll give you a drink for your 30-day shift.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'll give you a free drink for your 30-day shift. Wow. Yeah. Oh, well. I wonder about it. I just love it. Yeah. I think that's fine, I think that's a couple of fools in there.
It's 30 days.
30 days. You deserve a drink. It's not going to need it.
Well, there's only one free drink.
Yeah, just the one drink. Yeah, but you always go with somebody every day and go back again.
That's funny.
So, be aware of secrecy. Keep it silent. And Barbara also talks about don't teach each other. If you're students, don't teach each other. In other words, you're using your students just because you don't know. And so you're sharing opinions. And the one who has the strongest opinion will wind up dominating the conversation, and they may be entirely wrong. And in fact, two people at two different levels who are in the same class may have two entirely different truths, both of which are exactly right for the person who has them. So don't teach each other.
Can you explain how that differs from listening to someone on the phone?
I don't teach anybody we don't teach people when we lift them on the phone. We're just in a higher consciousness and they get lifted. If I get lifted up, draw people up to me.
If you say things, when I'm talking with someone, we usually talk about this.
Well, that's probably an error. Because whatever you're talking about is not the problem. You're talking about the appearance.
I mean, the principle. I am a little confused about this.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone, for example, in a class calls with the problem,
What problem? Let's take an example.
problem with the relationship, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And what I usually do is, usually now I see that there's nothing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But usually talking, listening, and then talking to someone about that fact. But I don't understand what I would, and I want to understand how I could do that without getting into the problem.
Well, two things. If somebody has come to you as a teacher, then teach. But what Barb was talking about when she talks about that is the ladies going out to coffee after a class and explaining to each other what Barbara said. That kind of thing. Is that clear?
It is. I just realizing how productive that is.
It is, sure. Mm-hmm. And you can, the reason it's called pointing at the moon is because it can't be taught. If you're stating a principle to somebody, you're lying to them. Unless you have the consciousness of the truth of that principle. Now, if it's part of your consciousness, if you're demonstrating in your life and it's part of your consciousness, then that's entirely different, okay? But then you're not having a conversation about it. You're imparting your truth. I don't discuss truth with people because there's nothing to discuss. You know? You people are entirely welcome to have beliefs that are totally different from mine, but we're not going to talk about them in this class. You know, we can talk about them in your class. You know, I'm teaching the infinite way as I have realized it. Okay? And it's not open for discussion. And it's open for clarification, but not discussion. But, so be aware of the position you're in. Well, that's why when we had Joel papers, I always told people, you know, don't go out and talk afterwards. Because each person has heard exactly what they're supposed to hear. And each person is at a different level, and each person is in a different situation, and each person has different conditioning, and each person has already heard what they're supposed to hear. And if I start telling you what I heard, and you think I have some sort of authority, then you're going to think what you heard was wrong, and what I heard was right, and what I heard may be right for me, but you heard what was right for you. So that's the danger. And what happens is the more forceful personality becomes right in some sense. So, you know, when we were doing tape groups, I always, you know, we lead in silence, and we always do after meditations in silence. You know, we don't talk. We don't talk about what happened, what we may have gotten during the meditation. We didn't talk about what we heard in the tapes, and we don't sit around after class and talk about class. For that reason, and when Sean and them were doing listening to Robert, I told them the same thing. Yeah, play the CD and then go home. Don't talk about it. Don't explain it. You know. If you haven't been asked to teach, don't teach. Sponsees, in the only valid, what I consider to be the only valid sponsor-sponsee relationship is where a sponsee has come to you because he or he wants what you have. Okay? Now you're in a teaching-student relationship. Okay? And when somebody comes to you to find out how you got, if somebody comes to you because they want what you have, then what you do is you explain to them and show them what you did to get what you have. And see, that's understandable. That's experience. Now, that's not intellectual knowledge. This is what I did, okay? And that's fine. That's entirely different. I will tell you what I've done to get what I have. The first thing you do is go to India and sit on a marble floor for 6 months. Yeah. No, but really, you know, in my way of thinking, that's the correct definition of sponsorship. And I think sponsorship should be limited to that, and should certainly not include anything else like medical advice or living advice or anything like that. You don't get that from me. It's how I got what I have. You hear about books to read and tapes to listen to, and practices to practice, and you hear simple statements of spiritual truth. But they're the ones that I don't tell you the spiritual truth that I know or I believe are true. What I tell you is the spiritual truth that I have used to get what I have, which is why you come to me, because you want what I have. So there's spiritual truths that are bone of my bone and that I base my life, that I have been basing my life on. So be really careful about secrecy. You can lose your truths, and And you can also do people a disservice if you are sharing things that aren't the truth, that aren't realized yet. Be aware of the difference between knowing something and realizing it. Once you realize it, they'll come flocking to you to find out that truth. And the truth or truth, they'll come to you. Share that by all means. Don't hesitate to share. What else? All right. We have 7 weeks in July and August, and we'll probably get most of the way through chapter 7 then. Unless we get hung up somewhere and we really got on something. We'll see. We might finish the book this year, who can say? Okay, thanks for coming. Love you all. See you soon.